We have been talking about the specter of the pandemic and how it's impacted the investment climate and all kinds of sectors globally, but as well on the continent. And so this next panel will discuss corporate startup relationships. Can they survive the pandemic? That's the question. And so we have the pleasure of Jiba Diallo from Ecobank that will be speaking to Tom Jackson from Disrupt Africa about this topic. Tom, Jiba, welcome and take it away.
Thank you very much, Neander. And this session is more of a fireside chat between myself and Jiba now. We hope Eero from MTN can join us later on. Jiba, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for having me.
Great to speak to you. Startup corporate collaboration is a big topic across Africa. Accelerator programs are increasingly becoming corporate focused or corporate backed, like Startup Bootcamp, Founders Factory. Corporates want to work with startups. At Disrupt Africa alone, over the last couple of years, we've helped startups form partnerships on pilot projects, at least with companies like Coca-Cola Africa, NG, the French utility company. And corporates are even acquiring startups, like I guess Standard Bank buying out SnapScan in South Africa is a key example, and if perhaps a flawed one. And we've seen a few key deals this year as well. Lots of sessions on startup corporate collaboration we've run in the past and happened at other events are focused on the mutual benefits of such partnerships, which I think are quite clear. You know, startups can access larger customer bases, the expertise of a corporate, the regulatory muscle memory that these corporates have, and corporates themselves, by connecting with startups, are able to innovate more quickly, develop new products far more quickly and efficiently than they could ever do themselves. So yeah, startups helping corporates innovate in a way that would probably be impossible otherwise, or very expensive otherwise. This session isn't about that, though. This is quite a COVID-focused session, and it's about how the pandemic and the economic impact of the pandemic could hurt the sort of nascent startup corporate collaboration effort that we've been seeing in Africa over the last few years, which has been growing. Jiba, I'll just ask you to tell me about your role at Ecobank and what Ecobank has been doing in terms of working with startups. I know you did the Fintech Challenge, but is there collaboration more widely?
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to the team who put all of this together. So quickly, my role within Ecobank. So I joined the bank a little bit more than 1 year ago. And prior joining by Ecobank, I was managing the startup program within the Microsoft Africa project, covering all Africa. So my role in Ecobank, in a nutshell, is really to facilitate and accelerate partnership between the bank and fintechs, and even startup at a larger scale. So I'm managing three main pillars. I think you mentioned the Fintech Challenge. It's a yearly competition that we organize since 2017. And the idea is really to call fintechs in Africa and in the world who have very innovative solutions that they believe could help our customers in the 33 countries where we have presence, select the best project and give them the opportunity to get access to our customers. The second project that I'm managing is the Sandbox. This is in line with our open banking strategy, and the goal is provide a space to fintechs and to startups and to our partners in general who want to do integration with our API and deliver new services to their customers. So a good example that I can give is if you are a fintech and you want, for example, to enable your customer to withdraw money on our ATMs by creating a code, you can use one of the API that we make available on the Sandbox. And the idea is to automate the process. Instead of spending months, as it was usually happening, for you it's going to take a few weeks. And at the end of the day, the goal is to make sure that we have a long-term partnership and we do a revenue sharing model. I'm also working on very important projects with some specific fintechs and startups that we believe have very strong innovations, and my role is to facilitate the work between those companies and the overall business team internally.
Fantastic. In terms, you've obviously got all these initiatives, and we've reported on the Fintech Challenge for the last few years. Does Ecobank have any tangible startup partnerships yet? Are there pilots and deals signed with startups that are generating revenue for the bank and for startups, or at least providing other tangible benefits?
Oh yes, there are many. I'm not going to talk about the big ones such as Flutterwave, because that's the really the good examples that we have. But if I focus on the FinTech Challenge, from the previous editions, I can give example of two companies that we've been working with. So one of them is a Ghana-based company called Invest Mobile. So they create an application to enable anyone to do investment with our bank, and without necessarily having an Ecobank account. You can use your own account with another bank, or you can use mobile money to do investment with Ecobank. So we've launched the product in all the countries in UEMOA, 8 countries. So far, it's quite recent, but we are very confident and very excited about that. And we are now working on extending the experience in Ghana and Nigeria. So we have another 2 others, actually, one in Nigeria, Wallet.Africa, that many knows, providing digital wallets to customers that we are working with to help them get access, enable their customers to have digital or virtual credit card. And Data Integrated Limited, who is providing payment services to transportation in East Africa. And they are currently doing integration with our services. So these are a few number of companies that we got from the FinTech Challenge. But of course, there are others that we are working with through the sandbox. And for the very last edition of the competition, we have identified 3 companies. 2 of them are providing services based on WhatsApp. And we are very excited about that, because we know how strong the WhatsApp platform is in Africa. And basically what they are providing is a solution that are enabling payment through WhatsApp. And we are working with them for the integration.
All right, great. It's great to hear that, because I think quite often a lot of these challenges and things like that end up being more sort of glorified CSR initiatives rather than actually having tangible benefits and partnerships at the end for small businesses. So that's really great to hear that Ecobank is actually actively partnering with small African businesses. Have those efforts been hit by the COVID-19 crisis? I mean, have the FinTech Challenge, for example, I assume had to go virtual. I mean, have your partnerships or potential partnerships with startups been damaged by the impact of COVID?
So surprisingly, for the FinTech Challenge, because of the COVID-19, what we did is that for the previous edition, we used to have our final event, a physical event happening in Lomé, where we have our headquarters. So inviting the 10 finalists and give them the opportunity to showcase in front of a jury panel. For this year, we did it online. It was a very interesting experience because for the bank, to be honest with you, it helped us save money. But we've been quite happily surprised, because we were expecting the quality to be less interesting than the previous years, and it was not at all the case. For this year, we got a very strong involvement from the business, because we wanted to make sure that the companies that we are selecting have a very good proposal for the bank. And we wanted to ensure, as you say, that it's not just going to be another show or another event, but really the start of a real partnership between Ecobank and those companies. And during the process of the challenge, we added the COVID-19. So, okay, something that I did not mention is that when we started the competition for this year, we clearly identified what we call our pain point as a bank. and we invited the companies who want to submit their solution to kind of ensure that the proposal was in line with the pain point that we had. So we added the COVID-19 as a pain point, and we saw very interesting solutions from it. So yes, unfortunately, COVID-19 bring a lot of issues and made a lot of startups face serious issues. But at the same time, it also showed that it was a period, or it's still a period, where we realized that there are many things that can be done through technology. So, for example, as we speak now, we are using technology. No need for us to travel, and this event, the Africa Tech Summit, is still happening. So it was an interesting period. It is still an interesting period, and I think the fintechs in Africa have been enough resilient to understand that yes, this is a crisis period, but it can also be an opportunity for them to make sure that they provide solutions that the customers really need, based on the current situation that we live in. So quite interesting period. Sorry, Tom, we can't hear you. Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. So Ecobank's budget and another, sort of ability to partner with startups remained unaffected throughout this period.
Absolutely. I think it's for us, we really understood that having the event and having the competition is a good way for us to say to the world how fintechs are important for us. But as you clearly stated earlier, the most important is to make sure that we are going to build real partnership with these companies, and we are going to help them become, the real success stories that they expect to be. So we want our energy and our strength to be more focused on the partnership instead of the event itself. So I believe it's a good opportunity for us and for them for the next few months coming.
Okay. A lot of corporates that we're speaking to in various cases that disrupt Africa have been affected by COVID, at least in terms of withholding budget while they wait and see how the pandemic sort of pans out globally. Across the ecosystem, how much of a setback do you think COVID will be to startup corporate collaboration?
I think the biggest impact of the crisis is on the investment part. I actually see three main issues that they face. The loss of customers. So for the ones, for example, that were providing solutions for industries such as traveling, everything that is related to not entertainment but tourism, they have been highly impacted because their customers are struggling, so they've been impacted. The second issue that many of them faced is on the investment part. And the third one is that because we were more and more using technology, we were exposed. Many people, unfortunately, took the opportunity to kind of attack companies that are providing or enabling financial transactions. So they had to make more investment on the security side. That's for me the three main issues that they faced during this period. So I'm expecting to see the final numbers, and I'm sure Tom and your team, you are currently working on giving us the final number for 2020 in terms of investment. Hopefully it won't be bad. Hopefully we will continue the very good trend that we had in the continent. We saw the very good news with Paystack last week. I think in Nigeria we got a very interesting investment. But I'm quite worried on the investment part. I'm not very much on the customer because I saw many of them being very wise on adapting themselves on the situation, and if they don't have the right customers, maybe see how they can turn their business towards the industries where we see a very high spike, such as entertainment and the likes. So I don't have numbers, but I'm sure, Tom, you will be able to provide in the next few weeks for us.
Yeah, our view in terms of startup numbers, I think we've sort of said during this event and in a few articles recently that, I mean, yeah, 2020 is going to be a record-breaking year from a funding perspective. African startups have already raised more money than they raised in 2019, and we're only in October, so it is going to be a record-breaking year. But that said, I think the impacts of COVID on funding we may not see it until next year, because if you're a VC firm and you have a fund, you're duty bound to spend that money and to invest that money. So the impacts, I think, will be seen down the line in terms of how those funds then struggle to raise their next fund, and you know, whether people are still interested in making risky early stage investments, or are just going to be placing larger amounts of money into more established, successful businesses. So I think it's certainly been a great year and will continue to be a great year. But I think the impacts of, you know, COVID in terms of any funding squeeze will probably only be seen next year or even the year after. So I think we're all certainly still braced for some kind of negative impact in terms of, you know, sort of cash flow coming into the startup ecosystem from the investment side. On the corporate side, I think the fact that, yeah, we've sort of seen a few deals that we knew that we expected to happen fall through. A lot of startups that I've spoken to have seen collaboration hindered and have seen deals that they expected to sign fall through for various reasons, whether it be budget cuts or the corporate deciding they didn't have the bandwidth at that moment to pursue the arrangement. Do you think there's a sense, not at Ecobank, but amongst some other corporates, that startup partnerships are still viewed as kind of nice to have rather than must-haves? Yeah, and inevitably other things that suffer most at a time of crisis like this.
So I won't speak for in the other industries. If I want to focus specifically on the banking side, I think it's still a must-have. And the reason, Tom, when you started, you stated why. Banks are very well established. We have the relationship with regulators, all the license needs, and we have the in terms of platform. Okay, we worked, our teams work during years and years to make sure that we have a solid platform that enable all our services. But we are conscious of the fact that when you want to innovate, you need to go fast. And when you are a corporate, you know, you move like an elephant because of the internal processes, unfortunately. Of course, everybody wants to go fast and is very interested on bringing new innovations. But fintechs are definitely the right partners if you want to achieve that goal. I'm not going to teach you anything on the fact that fintech represent between almost 40% of the investment in Africa for the previous years. That's a sign. And you just have a look around you and you see how important technology is when it comes to finance in Africa. I always say when I participate to panels that the real fintechs is happening in Africa. People may not understand if they are not living here, but real fintech is happening here. So for banks, it's a must do. It's imperative that we find ways to partner with fintechs because they are more agile and they go fast and they reach the customers everywhere. Even on spaces that we couldn't imagine. So it's a must, and that's why we really, during this period, we really wanted to accelerate to the sandbox and the open banking motion. We are now very happy to have our sandbox live. We already have some APIs available, and we see many requests from fintechs for integration. We are working on adding more. We have a lot of requests for integration with telcos on their APIs, and we are working with the likes of MTN, Orange, and other telcos to bring more services to our partners. So for us, it's very important. We have two ways of doing at the large scale through the sandbox, and more specifically, when we find very specific solutions that we believe will really bring some value to our customers, and for that we have a specific relationship when it comes to integration with them.
When it comes to startup and corporate partnering, how important is it the sort of expectations are managed, and a startup learns to speak corporate and vice versa. Can we hear sort of, aside from COVID, various challenges when it comes to putting such partnerships together? You say the corporates move like an elephant, startups move a lot quicker than that. So sometimes there can be a mismatch in terms of how quickly these deals are going to be put together and how quickly any pilot project becomes a reality. And then, once those pilots are then in place, I mean, the corporate requires certain KPIs to be met by a certain time. They can't afford in general to sort of, as a startup would, fail fast and fail often. What kind of challenges have you seen from your experience of putting together these partnerships, and how must both sides adjust in order to make them work?
Sorry, I was muted. So I think the reason why Ecobank decided to recruit people such as myself and some other colleagues is because we recognize the fact that we move as an elephant, and we wanted to have a department that is really dedicated to accelerate partnership with fintech. So that's the first thing. But I think the main issue that we are facing when it comes to partnership with fintechs is on the regulatory, a little bit of security also. Regulatory because it's not only fintechs are struggling when they have the discussions with regulators, even ourselves. When it comes for solutions such as, for example, blockchain, very, very difficult discussions with the compliance and the regulators because it's new, because they are afraid of the impact that it could have in terms of anti-money laundering and the likes. So that's really, I think, where we are struggling because most of the time when we decide to go in business with a company, it means that the business side is convinced, and it's when we before starting the technical integration, we need to go through all the checks in terms of compliance, legal, security, and that's really where the tough discussion is happening. Fortunately, during the COVID-19 period, we saw many regulators being more flexible because, I mean, we had no choice. So that was the very good news. Hopefully, it will be a good experience for them to understand that it's the way forward, to go forward. And it's going to enable, at the end of the day, obviously, drive more financial inclusion. And that's all what we are looking for, really, financial inclusion for the populations. So in terms of KPIs, I think the main metrics that we want to measure on the sandbox side is obviously the number of fintechs that will be able to do integration with on an automatic standpoint, and also the revenue that is going to be created on both sides, both for the fintechs and for Ecobank to justify the investment, because it was a long investment that the bank did for that. And also for the other specific projects that we have. So I mentioned, for example, the investment application that we release in UEMOA. Obviously, the goal is really to see how impactful it is for our customers and for other customers, for other banks. And in terms of revenue, how it's going to help us, even for us, we as a bank, we've been the hit of the COVID-19 happened for everybody. So recovering from this crisis by having strong partnership with fintechs will be a very good message that we will be sending internally and externally.
Talking about budgets for these kind of partnerships and things like that, I mean, what's the runway like for them? I mean, do you see them starting to growing over time? Is Ecobank going to put more money into this kind of thing year on year, or do you think it's could it be a bit of a fad and then the budgets start to shrink over time? How do you see it panning out over the next few years?
I think Ecobank is already putting more and more money. For the previous year, from 2017 to now, obviously we put a lot more money. I think the model that we want to really highlight is the revenue sharing one, because it's a good way to ensure that fintechs will provide solution that makes sense for customers, because if they win, we win together, right? So I mean, I don't think for 2020, as you say, for the same thing that for VCs, for 2020, hopefully we will get out of this crisis. So I'm not expecting much budget. What I'm expecting is to ensure project that will land from the partnership that we'll have with the fintechs, and from the impact on the business that we'll get. Obviously, the more impact we'll have, the more investment we'll make on fintechs, obviously. So I don't think that for the 2020, the investment will go up, but depending on the result that we'll get, and hopefully we will be able to have concrete partnerships in the next coming months, then it will be easy for us to assess. And from that assessment, I'm pretty confident that we'll put more effort and resources in partnerships with fintechs.
The process of partnering during the current climate of sort of physical, non-physical networking, and virtual events and virtual meetings and stuff like that. I mean, does that slow down the process? I mean, how can we put in place structures that make it easier for startups and corporates to still partner during this sort of difficult time?
So as I was saying, we've been surprised because of the fact that we decided to go online for the final. So we were expecting, not much excitement and not very good projects, but it was absolutely the opposite. And let me give you a feedback that I got from the CIO of the bank right after the event. He said, even after COVID, I think we should go through this way. That's the way we should use more technology to enhance technology. And it was quite interesting. I don't think that not having physical presence, it's an issue. I'm currently working with many fintechs that I'm not physically meeting at all. It's even go faster. Because technology goes so fast, and we have so many ways of being connected and collaborating together. No, I think I don't think that it's a pain, or it's something that will drive some slowness. But of course, we still want to be being physically in touch is always the best thing. Hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to come back again together and have interactions. But so far, I don't think that it's worse than before.
In sessions like this, there's always a danger that we can get into sort of unnecessary corporate bashing and sort of blame the fact that these partnerships don't work on the slow pace of a corporate, or the fact that people change jobs and all this kind of stuff. There's obviously a responsibility on the startup side to make these partnerships work as well. I think it was last year at an event, another event in Cape Town, where somebody, I think head of strategic partnerships and alliances, I've got it written here, Old Mutual, said that the company was really struggling to spend a 500 million supplier and enterprise development fund that it had, which is over $30 million, just because it just could not find the startups to spend that money on. For various reasons, the startups weren't at the right stage. They didn't have the right legal documents. They didn't have the right, they hadn't fulfilled certain regulatory requirements, which in South Africa can be quite hardcore sometimes. How do you see pipeline at Ecobank? What's it look like? Is it positive? Are there lots of companies to work with? And what do startups need to do to make it easier for a corporate to partner with them?
I think you're touching a very important point. So for this year edition, what we did is that after the FinTech Challenge, and we are actually still in that process. So for the previous edition, we were doing boot camps with content, to train, to coach the fintechs using both internal and external resources, but it was really focusing on the business and maybe on the technical side. For this year, we did boot camps, but we integrated content such as legal, compliance, security, to make sure that fintechs really understand what it is and how important it's for the bank. Because as I said earlier, most of the time, 90% of the time, the reason why we fail on partnership with fintechs is because of those three aspects: compliance, legal, regulation, and security. So we had some very, very interesting sessions with the winners of the finalists of the FinTech Challenge, 10 of them, and the head of the various departments managing those three aspects. Very interesting discussions, very interactive. So it's the first time we're doing so. Of course, it's not perfect, but it was very interesting, to see that interaction happening between the innovators, the fintechs, and the people who are on a daily basis working on those very important areas for the bank. I think within the next few months, we will be able to assess the impact of that, but at least it's a good way to say to the potential partners that we are going to have, okay, this is how the bank works, this is what is important for us, and this is why it's important. So get ready, because we are not going to deal without those three aspects. So I think it was a very, very interesting approach, and we had very good feedback on both sides, both from the bank and from the fintechs on that.
What's the dynamic like in sort of meetings or virtual meetings these days when you're discussing a partnership with a fintech startup, whether that's a paid partnership or a revenue sharing partnership or whatever it is? Do you as the corporate sort of come into that with an advantage in that you're the one with the customer base, you're the one with the money in most cases, and is the startup in a position of weakness that it can't come in and say, we want a 50-50 split? Does the startup automatically kind of start on a back foot when it comes to discussions like that?
I think it depends on the value that they are bringing, of course. We're talking specifically about fintechs because it's the topic, but internally for the bank, fintechs are seen as vendors or potential partners. So the same way you are bringing some value if you have a very powerful innovation that you're bringing and the potential is very high. The same way we are going to manage this relationship if it was a very big telco with millions of customers that they have across Africa. Really the importance is point is on the value that you are bringing, the opportunity. We are doing some internal assessment on the opportunity that those fintechs are bringing, and for the sandbox. We try to make the revenue sharing model as standard as we can. And, because we don't want, the goal is to automate it. So we don't want to get back to a point where we are having email back and forth with the fintechs. So for the API integration, it's quite standard. But for the other kind of partnerships, I strongly believe that as a fintech, the more business opportunity you are bringing and the more value you are bringing, the stronger you will be in the discussion with the bank. And if, very honestly, most of the time, if we are not pursuing the discussion, it's because the business don't see the value, either because similar solutions are being developed internally, or they consider that we have something that is very close, or they don't see the value that you can bring to the bank. So as if we once you kind of complete the business discussion, it's almost 100% sure, that the integration will happen, of course, after all the compliance and security check that we traditionally do with the bank.
All right, fantastic. What's Ecobank's attitude towards exclusivity and sort of fintechs selling their solutions or partnering with other banks? If I have a brilliant blockchain-based tax payment system or whatever it is, and I've got a revenue sharing partnership with you, am I also able to go and get a partnership with Standard Chartered or with Absa Bank and others like that? I mean, what's the approach that Ecobank takes in that regard?
Sorry, Tom, can you respond? Can you repeat the question? I lost you for a few seconds.
What's Ecobank's attitude in terms of with regard to exclusivity? I mean, if I've got an innovative solution that I've come up with, am I able to sign a partnership with you for a revenue share, but also go and partner with Standard Chartered and Absa Bank and other sort of Pan-African competitors of yours? I mean, how do you approach those kind of situations?
That's an interesting question, because we are currently working with some fintechs on an e-commerce project that we are having, and they always the point of exclusivity. And we clearly said, we are working with many fintechs, so the same way. We are not going to ask. We don't expect fintechs to ask us to be exclusive with them. We are not going to ask you to be exclusive with us, depending again on the solution that you are bringing, right? So if it's a revenue sharing model, most of the time we are not asking for exclusivity. We strongly believe on the fact that we have presence in 33 countries is really a strength for the bank. And most of the time, the reason why fintechs are reaching out to us is because of that very wide geographical presence that we have. So on that standpoint, I don't think that we are going to ask for exclusivity. But if we come across a very, very innovative solution, it may happen. From the experience that I have from the bank, it never happened yet. But I'm not going to say that, it's not going to happen at all. And I guess, of course, at that stage, it means that the business discussion is going to be very strong for the fintech.
That's great to hear. In terms of sort of escalating startup partnerships, I mean, do you ever see a scenario down the line where Ecobank starts acquiring African fintech companies and bringing them within the bank's umbrella?
Very interesting question as well. It never happened yet. Again, not yet. Again, I think it really depends on the solution that we are bringing. I think in the scenario of, if we think about having an exclusive partnership, it's something that may happen. But from the experience that I have, I don't see any example of fintechs that have been acquired for the bank so far. But it's not something, it's something that can definitely happen.
Okay, fantastic. I think that's all we've got time for, but that was a very, very interesting fireside chat, as it turned out, and great to hear everything that Ecobank is doing with startups, and it hasn't been affected too badly by the onset of COVID-19 and all the associated economic problems. I hope your budgets do stay similar for next year, and that you continue supporting startups in the way that you have done. And I think just the hope is, from a startup perspective, that this collaboration does continue to grow in the way that it has been over the last couple of years, and that COVID doesn't end up putting the stoppers on a development that has been very, very welcome over the last sort of 2 to 3 years. We will talk about the increase in funding for African tech startups, but they do actually need more than just money. And partnerships with corporates such as Ecobank and many others that are active on the continent they really are helping startups grow in terms of access to larger customer bases and access to expertise and all sorts of things like that. So great initiatives from Ecobank in terms of the sandbox and the Fintech Challenge and everything else they're doing. And hopefully we'll see more and more corporates doing the same. And fingers crossed COVID doesn't do too much damage in that regard.
Hopefully. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you for speaking to me. And